What is up, all of you beautiful people, and welcome back to this channel. And we're gonna be doing something a little bit different today. I got my buddy CBB Nick on here again, and again, you can follow him at Twitter at CBB Nick, pretty easy. And you can also follow me on Twitter at RobDFB. And essentially, what we're gonna be doing this for a few conferences. We are going to be doing a walkthrough of the bracket. We're gonna be talking about future bets, what makes sense. And the first conference that's on our plate right here is actually going to be the Sun Belt. And I think Nick and I would agree. This is one of those conferences that just doesn't feel like it's going to play to chalk. I mean, it might, each bracket could, but I think this would be the one bracket that where you look at, man, this thing is wide open. I can see so many different scenarios popping off here. And to kind of give it a breakdown, all of these matchups are going to be played on a neutral court at Pensacola Bay Center, and that's obviously in Pensacola, Florida. And to give you guys a little bit rundown of what happened last year, it was the number 3 seed Georgia State Panthers and the number 8 seed Louisiana Raging Cajuns who made the conference championship. And in the semifinals, we saw those two go up against the number 4 seed in Troy Trojans and the number 2 seed in App State Mountaineers. And this is, again, last year it was not chalk the same way. It might not be this year. The number 1 seed Texas State went down in their first matchup of this tourney last year to that number 8 Louisiana Raging Cajuns team. And man, I think that could definitely be a scenario that happens this year. We'll definitely walk through the bracket. And when we're looking down here at the first opening round games, we're seeing 12 seed Coastal Carolina going up against 13 seed Arkansas State. And then we have number 11 Texas State going up against number 14 Georgia State. Out of those two games, Nick, who are you picking to advance out of both of those?
Yeah, so with those games you said, I'll take Coastal knocking down Arkansas State. I think I heard someone say that we don't trust schools with Arkansas in them unless it's actual Razorbacks. But Coastal Carolina has been shaky too, so but I'll take them to advance. And then with Texas State, Georgia State, I think Texas State will be facing off first ODU in the next round. Texas State plays pretty hard. I think they played Southern Miss pretty well in that last game of the regular season, so I'd like to see them advance.
I like it. Yeah, and I think we align on those two. It's kind of the chalky option, but in these types of matchups, Arkansas State is easily, I would say, the worst team in this league.
Right.
Although I could see potentially an upset there just because of how not great Coastal is as well. But in that 11-14 Texas State Georgia State game, I do think that could also be an interesting one. I am going to go Texas State as well. They play well this time of year, despite what happened last year in last year's tournament. And I do think that kind of carries over when you do have an upsetting loss like that in your conference tournament the previous year. Sometimes you see teams just kind of bounce back off of that, even with a lesser roster. So I agree. I'm going to move forward Coastal, and we're going to move forward Texas State. So the first picks align with each other. And now we kind of work into that second round of the bracket, and we have South Alabama and App State at the 8-9 matchup. What are you feeling there as far as who you think advances?
So I think South Alabama will get it done. I think they've kind of been playing very well, and I don't think this is a team that Southern Miss, who they could face off in the round after, you don't want to face this team if they get hot because South Alabama has proven that they can run up the score on you and catch you by surprise and beat you by 20, 30 plus points. So I'll take the Jaguars in this. What about you?
I'm in the same boat. I think this South Alabama team, and I've been talking about it in my betting videos and been displaying it on my bets now for over a month. This South Alabama team, if they would have played up to their potential in the early part of the Sun Belt schedule and in the non-con play, we're looking at a potential 4 or 5 seed in the Sun Belt rather than, at the bottom in the 8-9 matchup and getting obviously the toughest draw of those kind of seeds. So I am going to also take South Alabama to advance to the quarterfinals. And then that's going to bring us to a 5-12 between Troy and Coastal. What are you kind of thinking there?
Yeah, again, I'm going to be chalky with this one too. I think Troy's just a better team. I'm not going to put a lot of stock in Coastal Carolina. They haven't treated me well this year. I don't know the numbers actually how well they've performed like against the spread and stuff like that, but I'll put my faith in the Trojans to get it done.
Yeah, and I think it kind of makes sense too that, once we see these lines pop off, it could be something like Troy minus 7.5 versus Coastal. And we might take Coastal to cover in
Right.
that type of matchup, but maybe not just outright win. And again, I'm right there with you. I think we're going to lean chalk on those first few picks. I'm going to take Troy over Coastal in that one to advance to the quarterfinals. And that's going to bring us down to a 6-11 between Old Dominion and Texas State. Getting a little bit more interesting in this type of spot. Who do you see advancing to the quarterfinals out of that matchup?
Definitely going to take Old Dominion. I think they are a better team. I think they knocked off Marshall in their last game, right, to solidify Southern Miss as a regular season winner with their win. So if this is a team that catches their stride, they knock off Texas State and then they get another matchup with Marshall. I mean, they could find themselves maybe getting to the championship game if they play that well. So I'll go with ODU.
I like it. I like it. Yeah, I agree with you again. I think we're going a little bit shock right out the gate, but listen, a lot of these conference tournaments have a solidified top five, top six, top seven, and you don't see a lot of upsets from these quote unquote bad teams this early in the conference tournament, especially when you're dealing with 14 teams. Sunbelt's one of the bigger conferences out there. And so, yeah, I'm going to take Old Dominion to go advance to the quarterfinals over Texas State. And then our final one here, let's see, this might be an interesting pick from you. We have Georgia Southern, the 7 seed, going up against the 10 seed, and UL Monroe. Who do you have advancing to play Louisiana out of that matchup?
Yeah, so I'm actually going to go with the lower seed. I think I'm going to take Monroe here. I think they're the better 3-point shooting team. I think they can just get the job done. I feel like I've been on Georgia Southern a couple times this year and it's just kind of come back to bite me. So I'm going to go with a little off the chalk path and I'm going to take Monroe.
I am actually right there with you. I think Georgia Southern is one of those teams that has an underrated home court advantage, and they do well at home over the years. And on the road, they have definitely looked shaky. They've had some play up spots, but UL Monroe definitely has a front court that I want to have, at least in these types of early matchups. And I'm going to roll with UL Monroe with you there as well. And that's going to force a interesting quarterfinal matchup, I think, as well there, too. But let's go all the way back up to the top. We have South Alabama, the 8 seed, going up against Southern Miss, the 1 seed. Who are you liking right there? Because this is a fun matchup.
Yeah, so this is where I know we're going to talk about futures too at the end, maybe after we do the bracket. Or I was looking at Southern Miss's numbers to win and to at least get to the championship game, and I like them because they obviously won the regular season. I do think that they're the best team in this conference, albeit not by much. But this matchup with South Alabama poses a problem because South Alabama has knocked them off before, so it wouldn't come as a shock to if they were to lose. But I'll take Southern Miss to advance. I think when the spot comes up and it's a obviously must win, they gotta win the conference. I think they're gonna show up and get it done. But it's definitely a game to watch.
Yeah, and this is one of those spots, man, where you won the regular season or you won the regular season as far as the conference is concerned, and you got the number 1 seed, but at what cost? Because you just got the shittiest draw in this bracket, and
I agree.
it's tough. I mean, South Alabama, like I said, could potentially be a 4 or 5 seed in this conference tourney if they were playing up to their ability all season long. And for that reason, I'm gonna pull our first real upset of this bracket, and I'm gonna advance South Alabama over Southern Miss. I do think it's a good ball game, but South Alabama is one of my darlings this year, and I'm gonna ride with them against Southern Miss there for our first big upset of this bracket. And then the second matchup we have in the quarterfinals is going to come versus James Madison, the 4 seed, and Troy, the 5 seed. Who do you have advancing the semifinals out of that matchup?
I'm going to take the JMU Dukes. I think this is also going to be another good game. I think James Madison probably just poses a bigger threat. But yeah, like this top side of the bracket, I think is definitely tougher than the bottom side of the bracket. Like if you were to flip either one of these teams to the other side, that team should have not a free ride, but definitely an easier ride to at least the championship game. But yeah, I'll take JMU versus Duke again. Great game, but let's go JMU.
Yeah, and Troy is one of those weird teams that again, they kind of finished a lot stronger than what they started, and that's because they did lose one of their better scoring threats and playmakers in Duke Miles, or Miles Duke rather, and for some reason they just weren't able to find a gel real fast out of that when he got injured, and I don't think he's ever coming back based on just kind of an ambiguous term for why he's not playing, just a personal reason sort of thing, and there hasn't been any positive notes to hint that he would be returning for this conference tourney. So I am also going to take James Madison. I think they play a very, what's the way to put it? Just a capable style in these types of tournament bracket sort of situations where they can win a game just by suffocating you on defense, and they have the ability to score on these teams as well. So I am going to also take James Madison to advance to the semifinals against South Alabama on there. And then as we go down to the 3 versus 6, it's going to be Marshall versus Alabama. Who do you have coming out of that matchup?
Wait, sorry, what's matchup are we on?
Yep, so it would be Marshall going up against Old Dominion in the
Oh,
quarterfinals.
sorry about that. Yeah, again, we kind of alluded to it earlier. ODU just beat Marshall. So is there a revenge spot for Marshall in this game? It definitely is going to play an edge, but I think I'm going to take ODU to upset Marshall. I think this team is going to just fight right back and show them that that win wasn't a fluke. I know it was a short spread. I think it was 3 points. But I think they're going to show them that they're for real and they're going to beat them again.
I don't mind that pick at all. I am going to roll with Marshall, but I do think they're one of those volatile teams in this conference where they could steamroll their way all the way through the championship, and I wouldn't be surprised. I also wouldn't be surprised if, yeah, in this specific type of matchup or even in the next round, if they were to advance where they maybe lay an egg. So I'm going to take Marshall, but I totally see the Old Dominion side to it, and depending on what that spread is in that neutral court matchup, might be worth a bet on Old Dominion. We'll see about that though. As far as the next or the last quarterfinals matchup, we have the 2 seed Louisiana going up against our rival, in-state rival in UL Monroe, the 10 seed. What are you thinking in that matchup? Because I obviously Louisiana swept the season series, but this is kind of where it gets dicey in this sort of type of conference tournament play action.
Yeah, definitely. And it's hard to sweep a team, let alone beat them 3 times in the same year. But I think they're going to get it done. I think their offense is just too powerful for UL Monroe. They don't have a strong defense to combat with the Raging Cajuns. They're a top 30 offense in the country. So I'm going to go with just a team that can fire. I think they're shooting like 38% from three and almost 50% from the field as its squad. So I'll go with the offense and the Raging Cajuns.
Yep, and I'm going right there with you. I'm advancing Louisiana as well for the similar reasons you just mentioned. And also, yeah, it is difficult to beat a team 3 times in one year, but usually that's reserved for the teams that are kind of razor thin close in terms of, talent. Usually when there's a big discrepancy, it's a little bit easier to sweep a team 3 times in one season. But as we kind of advance to the semifinals all the way up the top, I have South Alabama going up against James Madison, and you have Southern Miss going up against James Madison. So in that Southern Miss James Madison matchup, who do you have advancing the championship?
I am gonna still stick with my Southern Miss. They've been my darling all year. I think they're gonna get to the championship game. They're gonna knock off JMU, and we'll see them play on in the championship game.
I like it. Yeah, and if my South Alabama Jaguars did not advance to my semifinals in my bracket, I would probably lean that way too. I think I would take Southern Miss to beat James Madison, but seeing as I do have James Madison versus South Alabama, I am going to go again a little bit shock here. I'm going to take James Madison. I'm going to have to go against my Jaguars boys, unfortunately. I do think they could compete in this matchup if it were to happen and potentially advance to the championship game. But for now, I'm just going to roll with James Madison there. But as we scroll down to the second semifinals matchup, we have Louisiana going up against Marshall, but you also have Old Dominion going up against Louisiana. So out of that matchup, who do you see advancing the championship?
Yeah, it really sucks just leaning so much chalk, but I think Louisiana's, like I said, their offense is just too powerful, and I don't think ODU's defense will be able to stop them. So I'd like to see the Raging Cajuns make it through this round as well.
I like it. Yeah, and as far as my pick goes, I am going to stick with Marshall going ahead of Louisiana to the championship to make it a James Madison Marshall championship. But hey, Southern Miss, Louisiana, if that's what the championship comes to, I'd be all over that. I would be all about that, to be honest. A lot of fun, different scenarios that could play out in this conference. But as far as the championship game between Louisiana and Southern Miss goes, who are you taking to win this whole bracket?
I hope this is what we get because I think it's going to be offensive clinic. I think it's going to be a high scoring game, which is always just makes the games more fun, especially for a game that means a lot. But I think I'm going to go with Southern Miss. I think I'm just going to go with the one seed all the way through. I think it's going to be a very good game. Again, high scoring, close game. So I'm going to go with the Golden Eagles.
I like it. I like it. And as far as my matchup between Marshall and James Madison, I think this could be a good game too. I think it will come down to just which teams can make runs, in this game because James Madison can sometimes be a little bit on the drought side of things where they just going to lean on their defense, try to force turnovers. But Marshall just feels like one of those teams that potentially could just steamroll through each round of their bracket. So I'm actually going to take Marshall to advance to the NCAA tournament and win the Sun Belt. But as far as that goes, so you have Southern Miss winning it. I have Marshall winning it in those types of fields, that doesn't necessarily mean those are the bets we're going to be placing. Obviously, it could, line up with that as well. But there's a lot of value that goes around when you're talking about future bets and conference tournament action and NCAA tournament play. What bets, if any, are you throwing on the Sun Belt Conference Championship this year?
So we touched on it earlier, talking about South Alabama. Looking on Bovada, South Alabama to make the championship game is plus 550, and they're plus 1,000 to win the Sun Belt. I think that has a lot of value considering I think the toughest matchup that they would have if they were to make a run is in their second round or the third round of the tournament against Southern Miss, who they've proven they can beat already. So I think there's value on at least plus 550 to make it to the championship game. But again, I being Southern Miss, they are plus 275 to reach the championship game. They only have to win 2 games, which again might be. I think their toughest battle again will be that first round if they play South Alabama, or excuse me. Because if I think they can handle JMU, I think South Alabama might pose actually a bigger threat just because it might be like a 8 seed, 1 seed, like underdog, hungry dogs run faster type of situation.
Mm.
So plus 275 for them to reach a championship game, or plus 550 to win the conference. I like those two. ULL also has a little bit of value there, plus 425 to win. I think with that high powered offense, and again they only have to win 2 games as well to reach the championship game. So I like that, but I like South Alabama for sort of a long shot at plus 1,000 to win. Southern Miss is my safe pick at plus 550.
I really like that, and kind of what you alluded to actually when we were talking about the second round or that top side of the Sun Belt bracket. I think that is going to produce potentially a champion if Marshall gets knocked off, which is definitely possible. I mean, they could lose, like you'd said, to Old Dominion. I think they could lose to Louisiana, and we kind of align on the South Alabama side. I am dropping a half unit on South Alabama to win the Sun Belt at plus 1,000. I also have a half unit bet on them to make the Sun Belt Championship at plus 550. And then the other two bets that I have in this conference, I have 2 units on James Madison to reach the Sun Belt Championship at plus 100. And then I have a half unit on James Madison to win the Sun Belt at plus 400. So I'm kind of thinking the value as terms of betting performance is at the top side of the Sun Belt for sure. But like I said, I picked my winner for the Sun Belt. It was Marshall. But if you look at all the books right now, they are actually the favorite in this conference to win the whole thing. And you're still getting juice, or not laying juice rather, but you're getting plus odds by taking Marshall, but it's not meaty enough for me. So I've kind of laid off of them there. But yeah, really fun matchup in the Sun Belt going down. Can't wait for this to tip. It's going to be tipping off on Tuesday, February 28th. Can't wait. This is the best time of the year. And with all that said, y'all, we're going to make some more videos regarding the conference tournaments this season, and we will see you in a future video here. Take it easy.